Story 1. The roommate who learned a hard lesson. I had lived with roommates before, but none quite like Kevin. At first, he seemed friendly, responsible, and easygoing, the kind of person who could make shared living pleasant. We signed the lease, shook hands, and I thought, this will work out just fine. But as the weeks passed, little things began to unravel. At first, it was small. Dirty dishes left in the sink, towels on the floor, random clutter. I reminded him politely, assuming it was forgetfulness. But then came the first serious incident. My favorite set of books, rare editions, I'd collected for years, was knocked off a shelf during a careless cleaning spree. The spines were bent, some pages torn. I confronted him calmly, but his reaction was dismissive. It's just books, don't make a big deal out of it. I realized that this roommate was different. He lacked respect for other people's belongings, and more importantly, failed to take responsibility when confronted. I had a choice: escalate immediately with anger, or approach the situation strategically, ensuring that accountability was unavoidable. I chose patience. Over the next month, I observed patterns: which items he touched without permission, what he considered acceptable to borrow, and how he reacted when confronted. I documented everything, a quiet record of carelessness, neglect, and repeated disrespect. It wasn't about pettiness. It was about ensuring that consequences could be applied fairly and effectively. Kevin's disregard wasn't limited to possessions. He would leave food out until it rotted, ignore cleaning schedules, and even occasionally borrow my clothes without asking. Every time, he acted as if nothing were wrong, brushing off concerns with a shrug or a joke. I began to feel the slow buildup of frustration. But I reminded myself that measured observation and careful planning would achieve far more than impulsive confrontation. The tipping point arrived one Saturday. I had left my favorite vintage guitar in the living room, an heirloom, valuable not just monetarily but sentimentally. Kevin, trying to impress his friends, used it during a small gathering. When I returned, the strings were broken, the body scratched, and the tuning ruined. I felt a surge of anger, but I kept calm. I didn't shout, didn't lecture. Instead, I began the plan I had been quietly preparing. I documented the damage meticulously, photographing every scratch and broken string. I drafted a polite but firm message, detailing the incident and requesting that he repair or replace the guitar. His initial response was defensive. It was just a guitar, don't overreact. But I didn't respond in anger. I let him stew in the awareness of his own actions, the evidence, and the inevitability of accountability. Over the next few days, I escalated strategically. I involved the landlord only to ensure that lease agreements regarding property damage were understood. I reached out to friends who had witnessed Kevin's careless use, not to shame him publicly, but to establish undeniable corroboration. Every step was calm, deliberate, and designed to make the consequences inescapable. The opportunity for public accountability arose unexpectedly. Kevin had invited a group of his friends over again. I didn't confront him directly. Instead, I ensured the evidence of his carelessness was visible. The broken guitar remained in the living room, clearly damaged, with the photos I had taken subtly displayed nearby. Friends noticed, whispers circulated, and Kevin realized the embarrassment that awaited him. He tried to laugh it off, claiming the damage was minor and repairable. But the community, our shared friends and neighbors, recognized the pattern: repeated disrespect, repeated damage, and repeated disregard for responsibility. The social weight of repeated negligence became clear. Kevin's confidence faltered. I also began documenting more of his minor slip-ups: a stain on the carpet from spilled drinks, a cracked coffee mug he had borrowed, and a series of missing household supplies he had forgotten to return. Each incident added to a clear narrative. Kevin had been careless, disrespectful, and inconsiderate repeatedly. It wasn't vindictive. It was simply a record of reality. Over the following week, Kevin attempted to make amends, awkwardly offering to pay for repairs or replacement. I accepted his gesture, but not without emphasizing accountability. I made sure the process of restitution was thorough, documented, and visible to others. The lesson wasn't just monetary. It was about respect, responsibility, and awareness of the impact of careless actions. As the weeks went by, I noticed Kevin becoming more cautious around the apartment. He stopped using my things without permission, cleaned up after himself more consistently, and even apologized proactively for minor mistakes. The subtle shift in behavior showed that the lesson had taken root. He realized that carelessness has consequences, and that accountability, when applied strategically and calmly, can change behavior far more effectively than yelling or nagging. I also used the opportunity to reflect on my own patience and strategy. Handling a roommate like Kevin required not anger, but careful planning, observation, and thoughtful escalation. I had to maintain my own integrity, remain calm, and allow the natural consequences of his actions to unfold. By doing so, I ensured that justice was delivered without unnecessary drama or conflict. Months later, Kevin's behavior had permanently changed. The apartment became a more harmonious place to live, treated others' belongings with respect, engaged in shared responsibilities, and became more mindful of his actions. The quiet, deliberate process of accountability had reshaped not only the situation, but also him. Looking back, I realized the power of patience and strategy in dealing with difficult roommates. Immediate confrontation may satisfy anger, but thoughtful observation, documentation, and strategic accountability produce lasting results. Respect is earned, maintained, and protected not just through rules, but through consistent observation and measured responses. I even noticed small, almost poetic moments of karmic balance. Kevin's own belongings, often neglected or damaged through carelessness, began to suffer small mishaps. A dropped phone here, a spilled drink there. Life seemed to mirror his earlier negligence, showing that behavior and consequence often find their way back to those who underestimate responsibility. Eventually, Kevin thanked me privately for helping him become more aware. He admitted that he had never realized the extent of his carelessness and how it impacted others. I accepted his words quietly, knowing that the lesson had already been learned in a broader, visible sense. Accountability had been achieved, and the apartment returned to a peaceful, respectful home. The story of the broken guitar and ruined possessions became a quiet legend among our friends. Not a tale of revenge for the sake of humiliation, but a story of accountability, awareness, and the consequences of carelessness. Everyone involved understood that respect for others' property and responsibility for actions is non-negotiable. The experience taught me about boundaries, patience, and strategy. Quick reactions may feel good, but careful observation, documentation, thoughtful escalation ensures that lessons are learned and justice is served. It's about creating awareness, not inflicting pain. Even now, when I move into a new shared space, I carry lessons from living with Kevin. Establish clear boundaries, observe patterns, document issues, and handle problems strategically rather than impulsively. The quiet victories achieved through patience, careful planning, and strategic exposure are often far more effective than immediate confrontation or anger. And in the end, that is far more satisfying than yelling, creating conflict, or seeking immediate retribution. Quiet, deliberate action, patience, documentation, and strategic exposure ensures that lessons are learned, accountability is upheld, and dignity remains intact. Story 2: A sibling sabotages your event, but fate intervenes hilariously. I had always known that my younger brother Matt was a bit mischievous, but I never imagined just how far his antics could go. Growing up, he was always the one who pushed boundaries, rearranging furniture, switching sugar for salt and baking experiments, and sneaking pranks into family gatherings. Most of the time, it was harmless fun. I laughed it off. After all, he was my little brother, and I loved him. But things changed the summer I planned my engagement party. I'd spent months preparing every detail: the guest list, the catering, the decorations, even a custom playlist that reflected the history of my relationship. Everything had to be perfect. After all, this was a celebration of love, a milestone that I wanted to remember forever. Matt, however, saw it as an opportunity. He was jealous, in a way that I had overlooked, like being the center of attention, and in his mind my engagement party was an affront to that. Quietly, he began plotting small disruptions. He volunteered to help with logistics, but always suggested alternatives that would subtly complicate the plan. At first, his attempts were almost cute. Maybe we should put the cake over there, he'd suggest, pointing to a corner that was technically fine, but inconvenient. I think the lights will look better if we dim them here. I went along thinking he was trying to help. But as the weeks went by, the sabotage became more obvious, though still subtle enough to deny if confronted. He started swapping labels on gift boxes, rearranging the seating chart, even accidentally knocking over decor items in ways that seemed innocent at first glance. My stress levels rose, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I trusted Matt, but not entirely. Something in the back of my mind told me he was enjoying the chaos he was creating. The day of the party arrived, a beautiful sunny Saturday. Guests began arriving. The garden was filled with vibrant flowers. Tables adorned with carefully arranged centerpieces, and the music played softly in the background. Everything looked perfect except for the small disasters Matt had quietly engineered. The first hint of chaos appeared when the catering trays were delivered. Matt had helpfully shifted the trays slightly so they were no longer aligned with the buffet table. It was a minor inconvenience, but the caterers struggled to adjust in time for the opening. Then came the centerpiece mishap. A slight nudge from Matt had tipped one of the taller floral arrangements, causing water to spill over the tablecloth. Guests noticed but laughed, assuming it was just a minor accident. As the day progressed, Matt's sabotage became increasingly audacious. He had borrowed the microphone meant for speeches so it wouldn't work during the toast, and switched some of the playlists to odd comedic tracks that didn't match the mood. Every time I tried to correct something, he appeared innocent, smiling and offering to help. "Oh, I just thought it would be fun," he said, as if all the disruptions were merely playful mistakes. I was beginning to panic, imagining the embarrassment if everything went wrong. The speeches, the photos, the first dances, all could be undermined by Matt's antics. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. As the evening approached, the highlight of the event, the cutting of the engagement cake, Matt attempted his most daring sabotage yet. He had accidentally swapped the decorative cake topper with a quirky, oversized cartoon figure he found online. My heart sank. Guests were gathering around, phones ready to capture the moment. And suddenly, the centerpiece of the celebration looked absurd. I braced for awkward laughter or embarrassment, but something unexpected happened. Just as I was about to scold Matt quietly, the caterer slipped on the wet tablecloth from earlier, sending the topper flying right back onto Matt's own head. The guests erupted in laughter, and Matt froze, red-faced and sticky with frosting. In a flash, the attempted sabotage had turned on him spectacularly. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Matt had planned for me to look foolish, but instead, he became the source of comic relief. I couldn't help but laugh, the tension evaporating instantly. Even my fiancé doubled over with laughter, clapping his hands in amusement. Matt's expression went from shock to sheepish recognition, and finally to laughter as he realized the universe had intervened in the most poetic way. After that, the party flowed perfectly. Speeches went smoothly, the music resumed its intended playlist, and the cake was cut without incident save for a few more accidental frosting smears that only added to the hilarity. Guests talked about the cake incident for weeks afterward, sharing videos of Matt's comedic misfortune. It became a memorable moment, one that highlighted not embarrassment, but laughter, humility, and unexpected justice. In the days that followed, Matt apologized sincerely, admitting that he had been trying to cause chaos for attention. We laughed about it together, recognizing that his mischief, though well-intentioned in his mind, had been misguided. The party, which could have been overshadowed by his sabotage, ended up being more memorable and joyful precisely because of the mishap. Reflecting on the event, I realized that life has a funny way of balancing intentions. Matt had tried to undermine the celebration, but fate, timing, and perhaps a touch of cosmic humor had ensured that the outcome was both fair and hilarious. What could have been an embarrassing disaster instead became a story we would share for years. A reminder that humor can often triumph over ill intentions. Months later, whenever I see Matt, we laugh about the engagement party.
Yeah.
The cake topper incident has become a family legend, a cautionary tale for anyone attempting to sabotage an event. His pride may have been slightly bruised that day, but the laughter, shared memories, and ultimate joy of the event reminded me that patience, perspective, and a little luck can turn potential disaster into lasting happiness. I also realized that in relationships, especially with siblings, a mix of love, forgiveness, and humor can turn moments of sabotage or rivalry into opportunities for connection and growth. Matt's antics, though initially frustrating, reminded me that life is unpredictable, and sometimes the best outcomes are those that no one could have planned. Even now, I carry the lesson with me. Preparation and planning are important, but so is flexibility and the ability to laugh at unexpected turns. The engagement party, the pinnacle of careful orchestration, became memorable not because everything went perfectly, but because of the chaotic, hilarious twist that fate provided. And in that, I found joy, forgiveness, and a story that will last a lifetime. By the end of the story, Matt had learned that meddling often backfires in the most amusing ways. And I had learned that even the most meticulously planned events can benefit from unexpected humor. The experience strengthened our bond, provided endless laughter, and gave everyone involved a memorable tale of poetic justice, humility, and the unpredictable nature of life.